Hello students and welcome to today's class. In this class, we will be talking about the religious systems that were prevalent in ancient Mesopotamia. And today's topic is the places of worship and their functions which were prevalent in ancient Mesopotamia. As we know, before starting the topic, we are first looking at the objectives of today's lecture. So, they are the development of architectural systems and the basis of classifying them. We will be able to identify the main religious festivals and rituals. We will be also able to understand how magic and charms penetrated into religion, and lastly we will be talking about the role of sculpture in the overall cultural ethos of ancient Mesopotamia. Mesopotamian worshippers might have worshipped in open air sanctuaries, chapels in private houses, and also in separate chapels located in different residential quarters of their towns. However, the holy place of utmost importance was the temple. Archaeological remains show the evidence of the temples in the earliest period of Mesopotamian settlements. However, the early temple plan and designs failed to answer many questions. From early dynastic period onwards, the presence of temple is mentioned in terms like Sumerian E and an Akkadian Betum, indicating as the god's house or dwelling. In its more elaborate form, the temple was built on a series of asymmetrical artificial platforms with one on top of the other. These were squared off during the 3rd dynasty of Ur to create a ziggurat. Heavy walls, first oval then rectangular, enclosed the storerooms, the temple kitchen, workshop and many other chambers were found on the lowest of these platforms. While the highest level is approached by a stairway with the god's living quarters centered in the cellar and a rectangular room with an entrance door in the long fence at one corner. The god's place on a podium in a niche at the short fence farthest from the entrance. Benches with statues of worshippers ran along the long wall. There was also a hearth in the middle of the place for heating purpose. Also, the low pillars in the front of the god's seat seem to have served as supports for a hanging kind of roof that protected the god from profane eyes. Adjacent to this area is a connecting room with the god's table, bed and bathtub as well. The names of temple personnel are providing a clear picture of functioning of a temple. The staff performs cultic, administrative and domestic assignments. The craftsmen and other skilled individuals make up a significant category of people who carry out various tasks for temple maintenance. For instance, a cultic staff cared for the god's needs, placing offerings before them, keeping them clothed and sheltered. Besides, they perform rituals and other religious duties. In addition, the cloister staff also included managers, officials, scribes, laborers and women slaves. The Sumerian religious practices exhibit how priestesses served the primary attendants to the gods and priestess. Female religious personnel consisted of a number of priestesses who served goddesses in various temples. The high priestesses were cloistered to offer prayers for their male and female relatives. Besides, priestesses took part in the sacred marriage as attested by cloisters containing a bedroom within the shrine at a number of excavated sites. The abbey at Sippar, with a large walled enclosure, served the residents of whole community of unmarried priestesses. However, their cultic role was not clear, as the word Nadi Tum, which means a fellow, referred to women's unmarried or vaginal status. In most cases, they did not marry perhaps due to their wealthy or royal familial ties. Undoubtedly, they occasionally took part in cultic prostitution, which formed part of a fertility ritual. The Greek authors reported that every woman had to offer her body to a stranger in the temple of the goddesses of love. Whether besides nuns there were priestesses devoted to sacred temple prostitution is a debatable question. The prostitutes were clearly under a special protection and care of the goddess Inanna, also known as Ishtar. The temple represented the mutual identity of each city and is generally located in the center of the city. The temple was both the largest as well as the tallest building in the city. The sources reveal that at each temple, believers could worship one or more goddess to fulfill their mundane and religious aspirations. It is noted that most of the gods perform two functions. For instance, they can serve as the god of a specific place and also the patron of a specific aspect of life event. The temples were primarily built of mud, bricks, but the facades as well as walls were richly decorated by the specialized craftsmen. Also, the mud brick columns and half columns graced the temple with designs imitated from the palm trunks. The most significant temples had many courtyards and principal entrances that led to the temple cella. There was an antecella in front of the primary cella. The temple architecture was carefully designed and planned as well. Miniature bricks were found at one temple, which might have been used to construct a scale model. The religious architecture shows that there was continuity throughout the different periods of Mesopotamian history. From the 3rd millennium BCE onwards, temples became the symbolic focus of the rulers in urban as well as the rural areas. Stone statues were placed inside the temple to act as substitute for the worshippers who are standing before the gods in a state of continuous prayer. The ritual texts designated few parts of the temple establishments as private, in which some special rituals took place. The outsiders were not allowed to enter these private sections. The spacious enclosures surrounding the ziggurat at Babylon, which refrain people from entering a sacred space, is authentic proof of the existence of these sacred spaces. However, people are allowed to observe ceremonies from a distance from this sacred place. Architects designed stepped towers, which were known as the ziggurats. All of these had a rectangular base with 3 staircases which met at right angles. Most of the sanctuaries were also considered public places of worship, though in reality only the clergy visited them. The text from Old Babylonian period reveals that people at times donated small chapels to the temple. There were a number of wayside shrines with numerous votive objects also. Besides the temples having religious significance, that means the god's house or estate, they have also economic and secular significance too. It could also own property at number of places by participating in various productive and commercial activities. It is striking to note that the temple's economic activities included the cultivation of cereals, vegetables and fruit trees also. These also include a management of sheep, goats and even cows, and to manufacture textiles also and woolen items. Besides, the promotion of trading links with foreign places also remained the prerogative of the temples. These enterprises compelled a construction of storerooms, granaries and workshops within the temple premises. There is no doubt some temples lacked sufficient space for extension, particularly in crowded quarters of the old shrine. In these circumstances, additional buildings were utilized in different urban and rural areas. Indeed, the temple accumulated wealth, rural estates and craft industries, but this does not negate its religious or social significance. There is presence of the social conscience, which can be manifested in interest-free loans of barley made available to people in the times of famine by the temple authorities. The limited number of sale documents recorded the buying of children for an unspecified price by high priests of the temples. There is also evidence of transactions which shows practices of taking poor, illegitimate and orphan children for various purposes by the temple authorities. Besides, the temple also served as a forum for various legal proceedings, especially taking of the solemn oaths. The gods or their symbols allowed the temple authorities to settle human matters such as boundary disputes or distribution of shares in harvesting times. There is an observable difference between regular offerings and specific offerings, such as the great feast, emergencies or celebration of joyous events. The enormous offerings were given at annual festivals. The offerings include animals, incense, oil and butter. The human sacrifices were rarely practiced in ancient Mesopotamia. The most striking case of human sacrifice was found at the 16 royal tombs of Ur, in which the main body was buried in a large pit more than 30 feet deep, lined with stone or bricks. Now let us talk about the worshippers, those who are worshipping in these temples. Hymns and prayers have provided a window into the religious beliefs and practices of the people of ancient Mesopotamians. Personal prayers followed a fixed pattern which begins with an invocation for praising of the deity. After initial section, the middle section, which is of varied time frame, was devoted to complaints or petitions of the worshipper. And finally, anticipatory expressions of appreciation and praising of the god was followed again. The style of the prayers was not interesting or catchy either. They used many stock phrases, epithets and hymnal quotations. Numerous examples of liturgical poems show the feelings of respect, fear and spirituality. These liturgical poems were mainly addressed to a particular god before whom the worshipper bowed and appealed for mercy. It is worthy to mention that a prayer was aimed for various purposes, including imparting magical effectiveness to sacred paraphernalia and warding off the evil effects of eclipses or bad dreams. Special prayers expressed laments or complaints, while others conveyed for blessings and fortunes. Finally, when a man enjoyed economic prosperity and spiritual peace, he ascribed all this to the presence of supernatural powers that either filled his body or even guarded him quietly. Obedience to the gods was a cornerstone of religious behavior in ancient Mesopotamia. These obligations included many positive and especially negative perceptions or taboos. For instance, one could not invoke the god's name while brandishing an axe, nor drink from a cup of unbaked clay, or tear out the twigs from the steppe or break reeds in the cane brake. Similar perceptions are observed as one should not urinate or vomit in a waterway, nor take away a clod of earth from a field, so on and so forth. The gods inevitably punished humans for their wrongdoings by way of accidents, disgraces or illnesses and unexpected disasters. The prayers were mainly associated with rituals to avoid the bad evils. The rituals were carefully defined in a separate section at the end of worship to regulate actions of the worshippers or priests. The ritual section included the details of the sacrifice and the precise time of the offering. Through all this, the link between the acts and offerings of the prayers were fixed. For instance, the merchants who sailed down for trading purposes through the Gulf region to Bahrain brought thank offerings from their safe return. These merchants also paid part of their cargo to the temple of Nana at Ur, which capitalized on their venture. Now coming to the religious festivals and rituals which were prevalent in ancient Mesopotamia. The cultic association between the city and its patron god was formalized at cyclical festivals such as the New Year's festival and other religious festivals. The festival is commonly centered on a cult drama which was endorsed to institute the necessary religious function. A ritual text mentions that the people of the land light fires in their homes and will offer banquets to all the gods. The common person could only communicate with the deity through communal religious events, especially at cyclical festivals and other mourning ceremonies. The sources remained more or less silent about the role of ordinary people in the ceremonies or celebrations. However, at the very least, the public could observe the grand processions when the divine image was carried from the spacious yards of the temple compound or certain streets of the city. When deities left the temples, they showed themselves to the public and took stock of their city. Also, they visited their home and met with the gods of other cities to determine the nation's fate or to receive the blessings of the patron gods. The outdoor rituals involve the gods of more than one city, which facilitated maintenance of a theological unity on a national level. A number of legends spoke of gods and goddesses leaving their homes to visit their friends and relatives. These visits revealed actual ceremonies in which the divine statue was transported for regular calendar festivals and special occasions. There were many frequent festivals in Babylonia, including the festivals of Thanksgiving and sheep shearing. Many cities had their calendar of seasonal feasts. There are special calendar days for the delivery of the first fruit and the offering of the first dairy products of the year. This ritual act was recognized both as a religious celebration and an exchange of products between the cattlemen in the south and the farmers in the north of Mesopotamia. The most shared festivals were associated with specific days of the month, which corresponded to the moon phases. The concept of self-generation was generally associated with the moon, which waxed, waned, and finally vanished during every lunar month. The people believed that the moon died at the end of every month, went down to the netherworld, and then came to life again through its efforts and struggles. In this context, unique offerings were made on the day when the moon was visible and believed to be died, which means the day of lying down. On this specific day, Nana descended to the netherworld to render judgment and made administrative verdicts with other deities. When Nana had completed his duties in the underworld, he reappeared again in the skies in the form of a new moon. A partial or total eclipse of the moon was considered an ominous juncture. The significant gods asked the moon god how to avoid the evil omen propagated by these eclipses. Purification rites were a common feature of the Mesopotamian cult to keep the moon free of harm during eclipses. The top festival was celebrated during the New Year ceremony. After this period, the New Year's celebration took place during the first 11 days of Nisan, the month of the spring equinox. In the first few days, ceremonial ablutions and prayers were performed, and on the evening of the fourth day, whole of the epic of creation are recited in public. All this resembles the reenact of a medieval mystery play. The epic of creation specified how a universe was created through the Marduk's victory. It made appealing claim which forced the Babylonians to believe the world will continue without any radical changes. The herders, through the sacred marriage, believed that the dependence on pastures and breeding assumed the consummation of fertility in nature. In this specific ritual, the ruler, the priest king or king represented the god. His sexual union with the goddess Inanna resulted in the belief that the nature is fully being fertilized. However, the sacred marriage was based undoubtedly on the myth titled The Courtship of Inanna and Dumuzi. It was celebrated as the New Year's festival when offerings associated with setting up the bed was performed and recorded as well. Now we will be talking about magical paraphernalia. The protection from magic was necessary for palaces, public and private residences also. Protective spreads are placed or hanged near windows, drain pipes and a doorway, that is places from which demons might enter. The manufacture and use of prophylactic figurines, which have found throughout Mesopotamia, have utmost importance in the religious sphere of the Mesopotamians. The statues buried beside the threshold with some of these were dogs with names such as "Don't Stop to Think Bite" and "Loud of Bark", etc. A corpus entitled "The Nature of the Stone" is listed on the number of stones which were used for appeasing divine anger and preventing migraine. The popularity of this belief was shared equally by king, ruling elite and the common masses. The power of the stone was defined by its nature and material. For instance, magnet was of great interest and its nickname was used for its magnetic attraction. The nickname capturing may refer to magnetites being captured with other rebellious stones by Ninutra in the Sumerian myth Lugal-e. The popular etymology of hematite was explained on the belief that he who wears it will speak the truth and only virtuous man may wear it. In addition to the handbooks, there were shorter lists of herbs, stones or a combination of herbs, stones, shells and other magical equipments. The list of stones included beads of metals, for example, silver, copper, gold, iron or tin. Also, the beads of various minerals such as antimony were used for this purpose. Male and female stones are listed in the magical texts, stone lists and glass texts. Also, the amulets were widely used which were found in different places, from royal palaces to poor neighborhoods. However, the magico-religious thinking crisscrossed social and economic classes. The number of stones were strung on a wool cord and worn as charms around the neck, on the right and the left wrist or on the right or left ankle. Other amulet stones are hanged on the chest or abdomen. The prescriptions for various illnesses included long lists of beads reckoned in groups for each string. The string or the individual obtains its power from the stars. Now coming to the role of prophetess in ancient Mesopotamia. Male and female prophetess were supposed to be designated by the gods for a specific occasion or time to convey information to an individual or a group. The deity usually starts a communication, but sometimes the recipient could also persuade it. It is believed that the prophet received information from visions, dreams, auditions and divinatory techniques. Once the prophet received the message, he would repeat or rephrase it in oral or written form to provide motivated insight about the different circumstances. Although the prophetic activities were widespread throughout the ancient Near East, only a small number of these texts have survived. Akkadian prophecies often contained predictions of events that had already happened. However, at times some genuine forecasts were also made. The language of these prophecies portrayed heavenly predictive statements of omens. The accounts used formulaic expressions that revealed the identity of the recipient and place where the revelation occurred. The most significant number of Mesopotamian prophetic texts was discovered at Mari. Now, coming to the last part of this lecture, we will be talking about some archaeological remains, and first we will be focusing on the sculpture and the power and narrative which is represented by these sculptures. The art of ancient Mesopotamia displays great variety of forms and styles reflecting masses, cities, kingdoms and empires that flourished in the region from the early times. In addition to architecture and writing, works of art and sculpture, relief and pottery help us to understand the Sumerian religion. Mesopotamia from its earliest period has also yielded figurines of clay or stone which represents gods and demons. However, the certainty of interpretation concerning these figurines is a challenging task to ascertain. It does not mean that no archaeological evidence is available to infer information about the different religious aspects of the people in ancient Mesopotamia. The cella of Urk's White Temple once contained a cult statue. However, a female head statue dating some 3100 BCE was found in the inner sanctuary of Inanna at Uruk. This reflects how a cult statue looked like. The sculptor carved the face of white limestone and added details in precious materials. A wig of gold or copper secured by the ridge running down the center of the head. The eyes and eyebrows of the statue were made of colored materials. It was during Sargon's period that both Sumerian and Akkadian deities were combined in a new pantheon. It was done to bring down the traditional link between city-states and their local gods. It was processed to unite this region by strengthening a loyalty towards an absolute rule. Akkadian rulers increasingly exploited visual arts to establish and display their power and worth. A magnificent copper portrait head found in a rubbish heap at Nineveh, which dates roughly to 2250 or 2200 BCE, was identified as Naram Sin. It is further clarified that he derives extraordinary powers from a number of factors. It depicts an intended view of the portrait in its unchanging and eternal outlook. The abstract treatment of beard and hair contrasts with smooth flesh to give head a memorable simplicity and strong symmetry. All this denotes power, control and order. The theme of power and narrative combine in a stele erected in the Akkadian city of Sippar during the reign of King Naram Sin. The stele commemorates Naram Sin's victory over the Lulubi, who are the people of the Zagros mountains in eastern Mesopotamia, in relief. The stele further shows the king stands isolated in the background next to a mountain peak that advocates his proximity to the divine. His horned crown, previously an exclusive accoutrement of the gods, marks him as the first Mesopotamian king to exalt himself. Also, the bold musculature of his limbs and his powerful stance cast him as a heroic figure in different areas of Mesopotamia. Solar deities shine auspiciously overhead in joy, which represents the king's victory. Lastly, to conclude this topic, we can say in abstract that the ancient Mesopotamian belief system was a religion for this world exclusively. The people worshipped a number of gods and goddesses in different periods. The temples were built on mounds and hills in veneration of the various gods and goddesses. Besides many minor gods, each city had a patron or significant god. Also, the priests commanded great respect from the people because they also are considered as representative of the gods on this earth. Despite of this, People believe that God has no control over life after death. Thus, they are worshipped only to gain mundane benefits. So students, with this we have come to the end of this lecture about the religious beliefs and places of worship in the ancient Mesopotamia. Hope you have enjoyed the lecture. Thank you so much.